He divorced me and moved his new wife into our house. But what he didn't know was that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. I was about to take everything away from him, leaving him with nothing, not even peace in his own home. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. It felt like my whole world shattered in a single moment. The man I loved, the man I spent years of my life with, suddenly didn't even look like the person I thought I knew. One moment, we were a family. The next, he was telling me he didn't want me anymore. And as if that wasn't enough, he brought his new wife into our home, the home where we had built a life together. He didn't even ask me to leave. He just pushed me aside, as if I didn't matter. I stood there, in disbelief, as he smiled at her like she was the love of his life. "I want to be with her, Mom. You've had your time," he said coldly, without an ounce of regret in his voice. How could he? How could he do this to me? I had given him everything, my love, my loyalty, my life, and now I was just a stranger to him. But you know what? That wasn't the end. No, it was just the beginning. As I stood there, watching them, I made a decision. They thought they could take my place, erase me from this home, from his life. But they were wrong. I wasn't going anywhere. I had something he didn't expect, my strength, my pride, and a plan that would make him regret every moment of this. But what happened next? That's when things really started to get interesting. Stay with me, because soon, they'd see just how powerful I could be. Before all of this, we had a life that many would have envied. We weren't rich, but we had everything we needed: love, trust, and a beautiful home filled with the laughter of our children. I had put everything into that life, every single bit of my energy, my heart, my soul. He was my world, and I thought I was his. When we first met, I was a young woman, full of dreams. He was kind, thoughtful, and always there when I needed him. It felt like a fairy tale. But then life happened. Children, bills, struggles, things got tough. We didn't have the luxury of taking breaks, but we always had each other. At least, that's what I thought. Years went by, and I stood by him through thick and thin. I supported him when he lost his job. I cared for him when he was sick. I made sacrifices for him, for our children, and for our home. I never complained. I never asked for anything in return. All I wanted was to be loved in the way I loved him. But somewhere along the way, things changed. The man I once knew started to fade. He became distant, cold. He would come home late, always busy, always distracted. And I noticed there was someone else. A woman who seemed to fill the gap that I couldn't anymore. But I didn't want to believe it. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe it was just a phase. After all, we were married for so long, right? I ignored the signs. I convinced myself everything was fine. But it wasn't. It was then that I realized he had already made up his mind. He didn't want me anymore. He didn't care about the years we spent together. All he cared about was her. And then, in one shocking moment, he made his move. He left me, not just emotionally, but physically. The house that we had built together, the life we had shared, suddenly didn't belong to me anymore. I had no idea what I was going to do next. But I was about to find out. When he walked out, leaving me standing there with nothing but the memories of a life we built together, I felt the world drop from under me. For days, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. It felt like a weight was pressing on my chest. The silence in the house was deafening. And then, I realized, I had two choices. I could stay broken, let his betrayal consume me, or I could do something about it. I wasn't going to let him take everything from me. I wasn't going to let him walk away from the life we shared without facing the consequences. But what could I do? He had already left. He had already chosen her. And I was left alone with nothing but this house, the memories, and a heart full of rage. But here's the thing, revenge isn't about hate. It's not about causing pain for the sake of it. It's about justice. It's about making sure the person who wronged You feels the weight of their actions. And I had a plan. A plan that would make him wish he never walked out that door. I started by keeping my distance. I didn't let him see my pain. I didn't let him see that I was hurting. No, I was calm, collected. I started making the changes I needed in my life. I went to the bank. I started looking at my finances, something I hadn't done in years. The next step, taking control, the house, the money. Everything he thought he could just walk away from, it wasn't his anymore. I started selling off things we didn't need. Slowly, quietly, I began to take back what was mine. But I wasn't done yet. I still had one more thing to do. And that's when I began planning my final move. But then, something unexpected happened. A message from him, a plea for help. And that's when the real game began. Stay with me. Because I was about to turn the tables on him in a way he never saw coming. It came out of nowhere. One evening, as I was sitting alone in the living room, sorting through papers and taking back what was rightfully mine, I heard the sound of my phone buzzing. I didn't expect much, probably another bill. Another reminder of how life was different now. But when I looked at the screen, my heart skipped a beat. It was a message from him. The man who left me, who tore our family apart. Can we talk? It read. Talk. After everything he did, he wanted to talk. I stared at that message for what felt like an eternity. My emotions were all over the place. Part of me wanted to delete it immediately, to ignore him, to let him live with the consequences of his actions. But another part of me, the angry part, wanted to hear what he had to say. Curiosity got the best of me. I wasn't going to let him off easy. I replied, but only with one simple question: why now? He didn't answer right away. But when he did, his words were different from anything I had expected. I made a mistake, he said. I know I hurt you, but I don't know how to fix things. I miss you. Miss me. The words burned as they left his lips. After everything, now he misses me. I couldn't believe it. He didn't just leave me once. He had thrown me aside like I was nothing. And now, he wanted to come back into my life. I sat there, the weight of his words hanging in the air. A part of me wanted to say yes. To let him back in, to forgive him and fix what was broken. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I had changed. I wasn't going to let him waltz back in after everything he had done. Not after what he took from me. I decided to meet him. But not to forgive him. Not to give him the satisfaction of thinking he could simply come back into my life like nothing happened. No, this was my chance. To show him what it felt like to lose everything. To make him see the pain I felt, the betrayal I suffered. When I met him face to face, I could see the guilt in his eyes, the regret. But I had a plan. A plan that would change everything. Stay tuned, because when I spoke, his world was about to come crashing down. I met him at the park. It was a quiet place, not too many people around. Just the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. He was already there when I arrived, pacing back and forth, like he couldn't stand still for a second. When he saw me, his face softened. And for a moment, I almost believed he was sorry. Almost. He stepped forward. His hands trembling. I've made mistakes, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what I was thinking. I wanted to scream. To slap him across the face and remind him of the pain he had caused me. But instead, I just stood there, quiet and calm, letting him talk, letting him think he still had control over the situation. You left me, I said, my voice steady, but inside, I was seething. You moved her into our home, without a second thought. You left everything behind, including me. Now, you want to come back. He lowered his eyes, shame washing over his face. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said, but I want to make it right. And then, the words I had been waiting for slipped from my lips, soft and deliberate. You can't make this right. Not anymore. The look on his face changed in an instant. It was like I had just slapped him. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He stared at me, confused, as if he couldn't understand why I wasn't begging him to come back. But then I gave him a smile that wasn't kind. It wasn't forgiveness. It was power. It was the moment I knew I had him exactly where I wanted him. "I've already moved on," I said, slowly, letting the words sink in. "And as for you, you'll never get what you had with me back." He looked at me, trying to find the words, but I could see it in his eyes. The realization, the regret, the understanding that the person standing before him wasn't the woman he had left. No, she was gone. I had taken my power back. And now, he would see what it felt like to lose everything. But just when I thought I had one, he dropped a bombshell, something I didn't see coming. The truth about why he really left, and what he had planned all along. I couldn't believe my ears. "Stay with me, because the real game was just about to begin." Just when I thought I had the upper hand, just when I thought the last thread of control was in my hands, he said something that made my heart stop. "You think this is all about me and her?" he said, his voice almost too calm, too steady. "You really have no idea what's been going on, do you?" I stared at him, confused. "What are you talking about?" He took a deep breath, his eyes now serious, darker than I had ever seen them. "I didn't just leave because of her," he said, the words cutting through the air like a knife. "I left because of you. Because of the way you were treating me, the way you changed. You weren't the same person anymore." What? The words echoed in my head, over and over. Was he really trying to make me feel like I was the one at fault here? I felt the anger rising in me, but I kept my calm, forcing myself to listen. "You left me because of how I changed." "Are you kidding me?" My voice was low, but full of hurt. "You walked out on me because I stopped putting you first. Because I realized that maybe, just maybe, I deserved to be happy too." He flinched, but didn't back down. "You don't understand. You were never happy anymore. You just kept giving, and giving, and I couldn't keep up. I needed someone who would make me feel alive again." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. This wasn't the man I had once loved. This wasn't the man who had promised to stand by my side forever. He was trying to turn it all around on me. Make me feel guilty for wanting to take care of myself. For realizing I deserved more than the emotional neglect I had been living with. But I couldn't let him have the last word. Not after everything he had done. Not after what he took from me. I stepped closer, my eyes never leaving his. "You didn't leave me because I wasn't good enough," I said, the words coming out cold and final. "You left me because you couldn't face your own failures. You couldn't handle the fact that you stopped being the man I once knew. You wanted an escape. And now, you'll see what it feels like when you lose everything." The silence between us was thick, charged with every bit of pain, betrayal, and anger that had built up over the years. And that's when it hit me. Wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every woman who had ever been left behind. For every person who had been taken for granted. He tried to speak, to apologize, but the words were hollow, meaningless. They were just another excuse, another way to avoid facing the truth. But before I could walk away, he said something that changed everything. "I didn't leave you just for her," he whispered, his eyes now pleading. "I left because I knew something about you. Something you didn't know yourself." And that's when I realized the truth wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me, and everything was about to change. I stood there, staring at him, unsure of what to believe anymore. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The weight of his words hung in the air, like a cloud I couldn't escape. He looked down for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. Then, he looked up at me, his eyes dark with something I couldn't quite place. "I left because I knew something about you. Something you didn't know yourself," he repeated, his voice strained. "I knew you had a secret. A part of you that you buried deep down. And I couldn't live with it anymore." "What secret?" My heart began to race. Was he talking about something from my past? Was there something about me he uncovered that I had hidden from everyone, even myself? No, I said, shaking my head, trying to force the panic out of my chest. You're lying. What secret? But the way he looked at me, like he held the key to something I'd been too afraid to face, made my stomach turn. For a second, I thought I might faint, but I held my ground. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me, about everything I had buried, everything I had ignored for so long. He took a deep breath, then spoke again, his voice low. I knew you'd never believe me, but I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. The truth is, I found out something about your family, something you didn't know, or maybe didn't want to know. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I tried to steady myself, but my legs felt like they might give way. What are you talking about? I demanded, my voice trembling. He stepped closer, lowering his voice even further. It's your father. You know how he always seemed so perfect, so untouchable. Well, he wasn't. He was hiding something. And I found out the truth. I felt my breath catch in my throat. What was he saying? My father. What did he know? I had always looked up to him, trusted him. But now, everything seemed to be falling apart. He continued, almost like he was savoring the moment. I found out that your father wasn't who you thought he was. He had a past, a dark past, and I knew, deep down, that you would never be able to live with it if you knew. I couldn't process the words. My father. What could he possibly be hiding that would make everything feel like a lie? My mind was spinning, my thoughts racing. But there was one thing. I knew for sure he had just dropped a bombshell that I wasn't ready for. I turned away, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed to think, to understand. But before I could gather my thoughts, he grabbed my arm. You need to know the full truth, he whispered. It's not just about him. It's about us. I pulled my arm away from his grasp, the shock of his words sinking deep into my bones. What are you talking about? I demanded again, my voice shaking but laced with anger. What does my father have to do with anything? With you leaving me? With this mess? He didn't answer right away. He just stood there, watching me, almost as if he was waiting for me to piece it all together. But I couldn't. I couldn't wrap my mind around the words he had just thrown at me. My father. He was involved in something, he said slowly, as if carefully picking his words. A long time ago, before you and I even met. I found out about it when I was doing some research for work. And I couldn't ignore it. It was too big, too dark. My heart pounded in my chest. What was it? What did you find? He took another step closer. Your father. He was involved in a criminal organization. Not just any small group, but one that had deep connections, people with power. And he was trying to cover it all up. He didn't want you or anyone to know the truth. The world seemed to stop for a moment. My father, a criminal. The man I had admired my whole life. The one I had trusted more than anyone else. Had been hiding a secret so dark. It could destroy everything we ever had. I couldn't breathe. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what he had just said. This couldn't be true. It couldn't. My father, the man who taught me everything, who I thought was perfect, was tangled in something so dangerous. No, I whispered, shaking my head, hoping I hadn't heard him right. You're lying. But his face didn't change. His eyes were steady, as if he knew that what he was saying would break me. I wish I was, he said softly. But it's the truth. I felt like the ground had been ripped from under me. Every memory, every lesson, every moment with my father seemed to shatter into 1,000 pieces. How could he have kept this from me? How could he have carried this secret, knowing what it could do to me if I ever found out? And then, as if that wasn't enough, he said something that turned everything upside down. Your father wasn't just involved in that world. He used you. He used your trust to cover his tracks. Used me. I felt like I had been slapped. What was he talking about? How could my father have used me? I couldn't take it anymore. I turned away from him, the tears starting to blur my vision. But as I walked away, he called out to me, his voice desperate. "Wait, there's more. I have proof. I have something that will change everything." I turned back to face him, my heart in my throat. What proof? What could you possibly have that could make me believe any of this? My voice cracked, but I was determined to keep my composure. After everything, I needed answers, even if I didn't want them. He pulled out a small envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to me without a word. I stared at it, my hands shaking as I took it. Inside the envelope were a few photographs and a stack of papers. I couldn't bring myself to look at them, but my curiosity got the better of me. I unfolded the papers first. They were documents, with names and dates that meant nothing to me at first glance. But as I scanned through the pages, something caught my eye: my father's name, linked to a series of financial transactions and shady deals. My head started to spin. This was real. This wasn't some lie he had created. The photographs were even worse. They showed my father in meetings with people I didn't recognize, people whose faces looked like they were straight out of a nightmare. And there, in the background, was my father, standing tall and confident, like he was a part of something so dark, so dangerous, it could destroy everything we ever knew. I felt my legs give way. I sank into the nearest chair, the papers falling from my hands. How could he? I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. How could he keep this from me? "You're not the only one he used," he said quietly, his voice almost remorseful. "He wasn't just protecting himself. He was using you to cover up everything he did. He didn't want you to know the truth, because he knew it would break you." I closed my eyes, trying to make sense of everything. The man I had always trusted, the man who had been my rock, had been living a double life. And I had no idea. How could I have been so blind? But then, a thought hit me. Why was he telling me this now? I looked up at him, a sinking feeling in my chest. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Why are you telling me all of this?" He looked at me with an expression that I couldn't quite read. "Because I needed you to know. Not for me. Not for him. But for you. You need to see the truth, no matter how painful it is. You need to understand that you're stronger than you think, and that you can take back everything you lost." And that's when I realized the revenge I had been seeking was never about him. It was about me. I had the power to destroy his world, just as he had destroyed mine. But I wasn't just going to tear it down, I was going to rebuild. Rebuild my life, rebuild my strength, and make sure he could never take anything from me again. As I stood there, holding the proof in my hands, everything became so clear. For so long, I had blamed myself. I had believed I wasn't enough, that I wasn't worth fighting for. But now, I saw the truth for what it really was. It wasn't my fault. I hadn't been the one to destroy this family. It was him. And it was time to make him face the consequences. I didn't need him to apologize. I didn't need him to beg for forgiveness. What I needed was to take back control. To stand tall and show him that I was the one in charge of my own life. And the first step, taking everything back that he thought he had stolen from me, I contacted the lawyer and set things into motion. The house, the finances, the assets, all of it. He thought he could just walk away and leave me behind, but he couldn't. The truth was, he had already lost. His secrets were exposed, and everything he had worked to hide was now in the open for the world to see. He wasn't the man he thought he was. He was just another man with a dark past and a trail of lies. It wasn't just the material things I wanted, Buck, it was my peace of mind, my dignity, my future. I wasn't going to let him control my life any longer. I wasn't going to let him destroy the woman I had fought so hard to become. When I finally saw him again, it wasn't the same. His face, once full of pride and arrogance, now showed regret, fear, and disbelief. He had thought he could walk away and start over. But he didn't realize that the woman he left behind had grown stronger. "I want the house," I said firmly, looking him straight in the eyes. "And I want my life back. No more lies, no more hiding." He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He couldn't deny it. He knew he had already lost. I walked away from that meeting with everything I needed. The house was mine. The money was mine. But more importantly, I had my freedom, my strength, and my peace of mind. He had taken so much from me, but in the end, it was me who walked away victorious. And as for him, he had no one. No one to turn to, no place to hide. Because in the end, the one who causes the most pain is always the one who ends up broken. Moral of the story, Grandma's wisdom. You know, my dear, life will knock you down when you least expect it. People you trust, people you love, will betray you. But let me tell you this: never let them take away your strength. Always rise. Always take back what's yours. Because in the end, it's not the pain they cause that matters. It's the strength you find to move forward. If you've learned something from this story, if you've been inspired by the strength to rise above betrayal, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. There's always more to the truth than what meets the eye. And I'll be here, sharing more Grandma's truths with you. Stay strong, my dear. You've got this.